Richard.
Starts. You're all very welcome to the Ahdb Dairy Town Hall discussion regarding the new Ahdb strategy to 2016. On a day when democracy is having a difficult day around the world, this is your opportunity to hear and to comment on the Ahdb strategy. I'd like to introduce you to the panel that is on with us today. My name is Richard Soffe. I'm the interim chairman of the Ahdb Dairy. Will Johnson is with us, who is the Ahdb strategy director. Paul Flanagan, who is the sector strategy director for dairy. And also on the call today is Nicholas Sapphire, the Ahdb chairman, who is there to take any questions about governance today. So we're looking forward to your contributions. We've already had a range of questions sent in beforehand. So without further ado, I want to hand over to Will Jackson to take us through a slide presentation on the Ahdb dairy strategy till 2016. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Richard. That's great. So yeah, welcome everybody. What I want to do for a start is I'm just going to run through just a couple of the practical things about the hopping platform that we're on, about how it works and about how to ask questions. So we've got a meeting starting now. Just as a bit of a just so everybody understands, the meeting has been recorded, so we want to make sure that it's recorded so that anybody afterwards can come back and listen to it, and there's plenty of time for people to revisit any things that they want to look at from what's said over the next hour and a half. That will be available on the website and through social media over the next few days. So with the platform that we're using today, there are one or two things just to point out. So on the right hand side of your screen at the moment, there's a chat box with where you can type into the bottom of it. There's a couple from the event manager in there at the moment. So anybody who's got any questions as we're going through, please put them in in that chat box on the side. The other way that you can ask questions is you can actually come onto the screen, and then I can bring you up so you can ask your question in person, and it helps with any clarifications or anything that's needed. So if you feel that you want to do that, in the top right hand corner of the window with the presentation in it, there's a button that said ask to share audio and visual. And then if you click on that button at any point, then a little thing pops up at the bottom of my screen, and it enables me to bring you onto the screen to be able to be part of that discussion. So as I say, I'm really, really keen that we get as many questions as we possibly can do through today. So please keep asking them. One of the reasons that we use the platform that we're using today is the fact that it's completely transparent. So anything that is written in here, so anything that's typed in that box down the right hand side appears for everybody to see. And if you come up onto the stage, then everybody can hear what you're saying. So as a part of that, we're not going to be having any of the direct messages today. So any direct messages won't be responded to. It's all out in the chat and anybody who wants to come up on the screen. So what we're going to do over this, and I guess the other thing to say is there may be just a slight delay between speakers and swapping over presentations. So just allow for us just a few seconds in between, just as we get caught up. How we're going to lay today out is we're going to have a quick presentation. It's not going to be a huge long presentation. We're looking at about probably 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning, where we're just going to talk through the overview of the Ahdb strategy, followed by the dairy specific side of that. So myself and Paul are going to run through that, and then we're going to go into a question and answer session. So Richard, Paul, and myself will be here to answer any of the questions that you have, that may be and what I'd encourage is anything that anybody has on their minds or wants an answer to, or anything that they want to say, please do so, because it's a really good opportunity for us to get some real good feedback on the strategy. We're going to talk at the end about it, but a really, really key point of that I'm trying to really emphasise is that we are really, really looking for as much feedback as we can possibly get. So I'll talk through the mechanism that you can give feedback at the end of the presentation. But it's just to say that the strategy that we have at the moment, it's a draft strategy. So this is our first draft of it, and any feedback that is given will be taken into account and will be discussed and will have an impact on the final document. So I don't want anybody to think that this is a consultation just in name. It's not. Any feedback that we get will be taken on board and will be used to develop where we get to with the final strategy when it's released in a few months' time. So we'll revisit the bit about feedback at the end of it. So I guess that's the kind of the housekeeping bit and the bit around the practicality of it. What I was going to start by doing now was just talking through a bit of the overview of the strategy from an overall HDB point of view before Paul gets into talking about actually what that means for the dairy sector. So when we've been pulling this strategy together, and there's been a process that we've been running through for quite a while, and we've had one or two delays, but we're delighted to get the document out on the 7th of December. And there are two main elements to the strategy document that we released. There's a change element, and then there's the strategic direction and the practical side of what we are going to do as AHDB. So I'm just going to talk through 2 or 3 of the headlines from each of those areas now, and then, as I say, we'll jump into what that actually means in the dairy sector. So the change element of it is about how we're operating as an organisation and what are we going to do differently as an organisation. So a few months ago, we made five commitments that we would make to levy payers to be able to be transparent, and so everybody could see what we're doing. And the change elements of the strategy are what are really the response and the focus of that. So I'm going to start off by talking very quickly about cost savings. So the cost savings, and it's a question that we get asked an awful lot about: how are you ensuring that we are being absolutely as effective and streamlined as we possibly can be, and driving costs to an absolute minimum? Well, it's something that we have been really focused on and will continue to be. And as part of this new strategy, we are going to deliver savings. So we're going to deliver savings through the support functions that we have within HDB, and through the staffing levels that we have at Ahdb as well. So there's a commitment and already work been done about how that will work in phase 1. As we move through into actually putting the strategy into place practically, we will be doing things like looking at all the existing work packages that we have in and making a decision on which ones should continue, which ones should be stopped, and actually which ones maybe need to adapt to be something different. So we're going to be looking at all the work that we're undertaking, and then we're going to be looking at the central and support costs that we have. And as I say, that will come in a bit of a phased approach, but there is going to be a saving that is realised quite early on in this next financial year. So as we move on, we talked about modern levy collection. Now we've got 6 different sectors across HDB, and levy collection is slightly different in all of them. So what we've needed to ensure is that actually it's all fit for purpose, and that it delivers what is absolutely essential for that sector. So as part of the changes that we're making, there are 1 or 2 elements. So Richard just touched before on the governance side of things. So there's a governance review that's taking place at the moment. The governance review group was set up with an independent advisor to come back, and recommendations that have been put forward to the main board and have been worked through with the main board at the moment on the governance side. And that's all to make sure, again, that the governance is absolutely fit for purpose, is streamlined, and delivers what each of the sectors needs. And as part of this and developing a modern levy collection system, we're going to make sure that the levy is calculated based on what the needs of the industry are, and having that feedback from industry, and so the right people represented that can give the appropriate steer on where we need to be working as a sector. So that will then better be able to dictate what the levy rate will be for each of the sectors. And it's probably important to say at this time that although we're talking about an overall HDB strategy, each of the sectors is very much in charge of driving the work that takes place within that. So there may be 1 or 2 things that do spread across several sectors. So environment's one of the very logical things that we talk about a lot of the time, but there are going to be real specifics that apply only to the dairy sector. So it's going to be very clear at this stage that is what that from a dairy point of view, that will be dictated to by the want of the dairy sector. And then the 5-year ballot's the last piece on the change element of it. So the 5-year ballot is going to be brought into place about the future of HDB. That will take place over the next few years now, and will become a recurring thing. We're currently working through what the practicalities of that look like. So DEFRA and the devolved nations are currently working on how that would actually work, and as soon as we've got some certainty around that and how that will work and when it will take place, then we'll come back to it and give some more. But it's just worth pointing out that that is something that will come into place. So just to flip onto the other side in the strategy to glance, we've got 3 real key areas of work that we've identified within the new strategy: farm performance, marketing and exports, and evidence and data. And all of those feed into these key areas. So improving that performance, profitability, and costs within all the levy paid businesses that we have will be driven through those three areas. The importance of flying the flag for British food, so that we know how important both the domestic and the international markets are. So how can we best leverage that, and how can we best make sure we're having the biggest impact? And then at the centre of everything that we do, evidence and data. So that is really about making sure that whenever we make any decisions about, say, what marketing we're going to undertake, which export markets we're going to look at, how we're going to practically put research into place on farm, all those things will be steeped and based in evidence and the data that drives that. And we all know how important data is becoming in the modern world, and we need to be able to make sure that we're harnessing that in the right way at HDB and delivering consistency across the board, and being able to be that independent auditor that is able to provide the real clear evidence without having a foot in any camp. So that evidence base for what we do and how we can support industry with that evidence, and it can be through several different things. And we already have really good areas where we can demonstrate that we've done good work on evidence. It's kind of building that onto the next level and helping deliver back a real good value for the industry on that. So as a very, very brief overview, that is where we are from an overall point of view. And I'm now going to hand over to Paul, who's going to talk about it specifically from a dairy sector.
You're muted.
You're struggling with your microphone, Paul. So need bottom in the. Oh, hang on. I'll bring you up onto stage, and hopefully that will work. Yeah, there you go, Paul. You're on.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I've just got 3 slides that I want to talk through. Firstly, I'll cover our plan for spending the dairy budget in a bit more detail. Then I've got a couple of slides on a TV marketing campaign that's currently running right now. Before I jump into the priorities, a bit of context on our budget. This year we'll have just over £10 million of budget. 75% of it comes from the levy, and 25% of it, or 2.5 million, comes from external sources. Now, as a side note on that, the external funding is going from almost 0 3 years ago. So we'll pull that in. And the money comes from the Welsh Government, who give us money to amplify the work we do in animal health and welfare and genetics. It comes from the Betty Laws Foundation, and also from the Welsh Government again, to increase our strategic farm network. So we had 9 farms. Our aspiration is now to move to 25, and we're currently at 22. And from Dairy UK, and this year from the 4 UK governments for consumer marketing campaign. So Will, if you could just flip on to the next slide. Excellent. Our focus for the next 5 years is to focus on 2 particular areas. 1, improving farm performance through practical tools and services, and 2, protecting and promoting the reputation of dairy. So let me start just on the top right. As I said, our strategic farm network is now at 22 farms. 3 years ago, I think when I came in, we had 1 farm, and Tom and Karen Halton's was the first farm that the second farm that we had at that point. So we've now moved to 22, and we've now got short windows right throughout the country. So all of our levy payers should have a farm which is in striking distance when we get through COVID to get to a farm and see that. The key thing we've done as a result of COVID and dealing with that is that when we had on-farm meetings, we had, apart from the launch event that might have 80 to 100 farmers on it, we had about 30 to 50 farmers coming to the meetings. We've now moved to a situation, and great credit must go to the knowledge exchange team led by Karen Lowe and to Nick Parsons, who leads our strategic farm. We've now got over 1,000 people on average who are viewing the webinars that we do from our strategic farms. So 20 times more people are actually seeing what we're doing in our strategic farm, getting an insight into that, and that's pushing them to our website and picking up more information there, which is terrific. The second point, just on the right hand side, is improving consumer attitudes to dairy. So I'll show you in a moment a campaign we've currently got running, but this is the third campaign we've got in the last 12 months. So we started off with our Department of Dairy Related Scrumptious Affairs in March. Over the summer, we had Milk Your Moments, and this is the third campaign, which I'll just show you in a moment. So really important that we do this and not only promote what we do, but protect the industry. Look at areas where consumers are uncomfortable at stuff that we do, such as bull calves, and find a solution to that, and do that as well as the promotional stuff. Just moving to the left-hand side, we also have tools to measure and reduce environmental impact. Right now, we have a KPI tool we launched in September. Other sectors within Ahdb will be following us and having KPI tool. But the plan within that is to add environmental tools on there to drive a consistency on that. And I'm sure this will come up within the questions in terms of what we're doing in environment, not just the Ahdb, but what we're doing across the industry, because it's critically important that we move forward in step, whether that be the farmer unions or Ahdb or Dairy UK or the individual processors. There's no point anybody kind of jumping ahead and doing stuff. And the final point just on this slide is research on an environment, animal health and genetics. I've talked a little bit on environment, but from a genetics perspective, we spend significant sums every year on genetics. Really important things for us to do. We work very closely with SRUC, and we have a great team in Marco and Fern, who a number of you will have met. We play the honest broker to the industry and to the breeding companies in terms of what we do in genetics and herd genetics report. And finally, I think from an animal health and welfare perspective, really important area, both reputationally and also, I suppose, economically, because the healthier the animals are, the less they're costing you as levy payers. Well, if you could just move on to the next slide, just the eval as well. So this is the campaign we've got running. So it started on Monday. So a TV campaign, a social media campaign. And the premise about it is that there's a number of consumers who are actually reducing or thinking about reducing their dairy and meat consumption as a result of concerns about health benefits or environmental benefits. So what this does is set the record straight in terms of the nutritional benefits of meat and dairy, and also the environmental impact on the environmental footprint of British dairy and British meat. So some of the key planks we talk about just in the middle point here is we talk about vitamin B12, which is not naturally present in vegan diet, but is in dairy and meat. We talk about the British dairy industry and the British red meat industry being amongst the most sustainable in the world. And we talk about the standards, both the food and farming standards on this. Now, this is all underpinned by the British Nutrition Foundation, so it's all evidence. There's TV adverts, so there's already been on shows like This Morning and Loose Women. My kids saw it last night. I think they were watching our replay of You've Been Framed. It'll also be on Coronation Street and Video on Demand. Big push in terms of social media, particularly around about true and false details on that. We've already been in the Guardian, which, as you'll be aware, some of the anti-dairy, some of the anti-meat messages have come through. Will also be on the Daily Mail online. And I think really importantly, and this is following on from the Milk Your Moments campaign we had over the summer, we've worked together with retailers, and a number of the processes have been really helpful on this. So this point of sale in a number of retail stores, I've seen on Twitter that point of sale in Sainsbury's, but also as people go to order their groceries online, they'll see some messages popping up there, and we're in some retailer magazines. So a real push in this campaign. The TV element of it will run this week and next week. The social media will continue to run right through to the end of March, and this campaign has been funded by us in the dairy sector, but also in the beef and lamb sector, and from the pork sector. So this is an HDB campaign. And just in case you haven't seen the video, Will, if you could just flick on the video.
I'll just do that now, Paul. Brilliant. Right. So that is, yeah, so as Paul says, that's the advert. Hopefully you can see it. Hopefully you'll see it out and about on telly, on whether it is loose when you're watching Paul, or whether it's prime time on Coronation Street. We've got it covered across the board at the moment. So hopefully you'll get to see that out and about. So that's the end of the presentation that we were doing at the moment. And now what I'm hoping to do is move on to the question and answer section of this. So the way that I'm going to do this is we've had some pre-submitted questions, so we've got 1 or 2 people who've submitted beforehand, and as I said before, there are 2 ways of doing this. You can either type your questions in, which we started to see people do, so that's great. So any questions and comments that you want to put in the chat, do that, and I will ask them. Otherwise, you can click that button up in the top side that says share audio and video, and then you'll come up and do that. So I've got a couple of questions that have been submitted from Alan Robinson from Adrian Bland, Nick Ranson, and Phil Hellhead and Mike Coffey. So if any of you guys want to just share your audio and video, then I'll get you to come up and ask the questions. So if you can do that now, if not, then we'll run through them. We'll run through them in a few minutes' time. Okay, so Nick's actually put his hand up now, so we'll grab Nick onto the screen now and we'll get his question first. It just takes 1 or 2 seconds for Nick to come through. And Paul, I'm going to actually try and, I think at the moment you are on the screen twice. I've got 2 of you at the moment, so I think you need to come off mute though. There we go.
Hear me?
Yeah, you're fine. I can hear you now. Yeah, absolutely. So if Nick, if that's not quite worked, Nick, which is a bit of a shame because it has been working fairly well. So when it pops up and you ask to come on, it'll ask you to just confirm your microphone and your video, and if you click apply at the bottom, then you should appear. So if that's not worked, Nick, and you want to try again, go ahead and do so. I guess in the meantime, I'll just pick up on one of the questions that we've had submitted so far. So you talked a little bit about budgets at the beginning, Paul, and so it might be just worth just doing this one to start with. Murray's asked about how much of the 10 million is spent on salaries in the dairy sector and how's it decided. So that's a little bit about how the budgeting works.
Well, from a budgeting process, from a strategy process, the strategy is set by the sector board. So the sector board that Richard leads will decide what areas they want to focus on and what level of detail they want to focus on. After that, then I work with the individual directors in each area, whether that be marketing or knowledge exchange technical or communications, to develop a plan which is going to match the priorities that the dairy board set. So that's the way it works. And for example, in terms of how we allocate the money, the marketing would be a heavy area of spend. Knowledge exchange would be a heavy area of spend, because we've got to run a strategic farm network. So that's how it works. So you populate priorities, and then you determine the amount of people you need to deal with that. In terms of your specific questions about how much is spent in salaries in the dairy sector, I'll have to get back to you. I don't have that figure to hand, but we allocate people and areas based on what the priorities are for the dairy board.
Yeah, and I'd agree. And just to build on that as well, Paul, I think that the kind of this we've got quite and we talked a little bit about costs earlier on. Well, I talked in my introduction a bit about costs, and trying to make sure that we're basing all the costs around what the delivery is. So how can we deliver in the best way? And so there is the balance between actually how much we have in-house, and so how many of the teams that we have to deliver this are based within HDB, and how much then we use external people to be able to deliver some other elements of it. And there's always a huge amount of work done to make sure we're getting that balance right, so that we're not overstretching ourselves in terms of the size of the teams that we have, but we're also able to deliver some very, very key skills. And there are some areas actually where having the in-house ability to do it makes a huge difference and enables you to be a lot more agile. So it's getting that balance right. And as part of the cost exercise I was talking about before, everything has been reviewed at the moment to make sure that we have got that on absolutely the right plane. Okay, so that's the first question off. So unfortunately, I think that we're having one or two problems with trying to get people up on screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go with one or two of the pre-recorded questions. So Richard, if you could just answer this one. So Adrian Bland had submitted a question beforehand, and the question was: the reputation of AHDB needs improving amongst dairy farmers. Certainly in my area, it appears not very good, and just wondered how we're going to improve that reputation.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Adrian. And I'd start by saying I really hope we're not complacent, and the new strategy is about engaging more with levy payers and trying to see how we can do things better. And we're really key element of that is engagement. I've noticed David Cotton's question, we'll come to later on, in terms of how do we get this message out today to other people when there's other conferences, etc., going on, and why, as was mentioned right at the beginning, this is being recorded. And as we found with strategic dairy farms, 30 or 40 people may come to a dairy farming strategic dairy farming event, but 1,000 people will be watching it on YouTube. So that's really important. In terms of engaging with more dairy farmers, clearly the webinars that I've mentioned are really important, as are the KE team, and that's the knowledge exchange team, who are actively, as well as part of their normal job of contacting farmers and putting on webinars, etc. And we still have been launching webinars during the COVID times. Each of the knowledge exchange people are tasked with phoning 10 dairy farmers per week. That's each person phoning 10 dairy farmers per week, who perhaps we haven't had a relationship in the past, to encourage them and remind them what's available both online and in the webinars. Because what I'm sure you found, Adrian and other people who we're delighted to be involved with on the strategic dairy farms, is those people who engage with HDB really see the value, and there's a hugely positive response from those people who engage. And in terms of the annual, and we do ask levy payers every year about how they engage, those people who regularly engage with us, we get a feedback form of about 90% of positivity. And you won't be surprised that those people who don't engage with HDB, don't come to the webinars, are less enthusiastic about it. So to answer your question, we're really actively engaging and trying to engage with more people that we haven't engaged with before. And I had to, with some success, but as I say, we're not complacent, and your suggestions would be gratefully received. And I think in terms of, and Will may come to this, not only webinars like this, but there's opportunity on the website or to post in your suggestions and of things that we might do. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And just to build on that, it's a really, really good point about levy payer engagement. So I think across Ahdb as a whole, and you'll see if and just for information as well, if you want any more information on the bits that we're talking about today, the strategy document is online on the Ahdb website. So if you go on there and click on the main page, there's a button there that takes you through and gives a bit more detail. And in there at the beginning, in the change section, we are talking about levy payer engagement there. And it's absolutely vital for us to be able to lift that engagement and to be able to engage with more levy payers. And I think that there's a big difference between communicating and engaging. And actually, we know that we have to make sure that we've got this two-way conversation with levy payers. So some of that will come through representation and ability to be able to feed in, but some of that's going to become over building relationships over time. And we've got, as we alluded to at the beginning, we've got the 5-year ballot that's going to be here. So actually, as far as Ahdb goes, knowing levy payers and being able to communicate effectively what we do, to be able to be led by what levy payers are wanting us to deliver, is going to be absolutely vital for us. So this whole area is going to be a huge focus within Ahdb. So that's across all sectors, really. Thank you very much for that, Richard.
Can't hear you, Will. I don't know if you can hear us.
No, I've been talking to myself. How long have I been talking to myself for? About 5 minutes. Yeah, excellent. Right, I'll rewind and start again. So I was covering the bit about levy payer engagement, which is absolutely vital for us at Ahdb. The levy payer engagement is going to be something that helps drive us on, especially with the ballots and one or two other things coming up. So you'll be seeing a lot more about engagement and what we are trying to do. And this all plays into this transparency and making sure we're very, very clear about what we're doing, about where it's been driven from, and about how it can benefit the dairy sector. So what I was going to do then was I was going to move on to just pick up one or two of these questions that have come in on the chat. So Paul, I've just picked up a question here from Kate Barrow, which is around our marketing and the way we're delivering our marketing at the moment. That we're probably peddling the same messages, and the messages are the same as they always have been. And have we thought about looking at other properties of milk in terms of the way that we're delivering our marketing at the moment? So I don't know if you just want to pick that one up.
Yeah, so I suppose a couple of ways to answer that. One, I don't think the Eat Balanced campaign is similar to what we've done before in terms of, I don't think we've ever talked about vitamin B12 or calcium within milk and promoted that so strongly. But I think the other broader point in terms of marketing is when we look at a specific target audience, and just remember, you know, if we almost scale people from 1 to 10. At 10 is you know, people who would consume a lot of dairy, consume a lot of milk like me or a lot of people on the call, and 1 might be somebody who has been vegan for a number of years. The people we're focusing in is, you know, the 4, 5, 6, 7 people who are open to persuasion within that. And what we'll do, we develop campaigns for them, test messages with them in terms of what's working, and then develop campaigns. So any campaign we do, whether that be Department of Dairy Related Scrumptious Affairs or Milk Your Milk More over the summer, or this campaign, will be tested with consumers and tested with focus groups in terms of what works. So and then obviously we'll fully evaluate that when it finishes. So I would challenge that point that we're doing stuff that we've always done, because every time we do it, we look at different consumers, we test it, we learn each time, and what the basis of this is doing is shifting attitudes. And again, what we've done from the various campaigns over the last number of years is we have shifted attitudes to dairy. Those people have said they're thinking about reducing their dairy consumption, haven't done that as much as they said they were going to do as a result of our campaign. So we test that as we go along, and we test what works. Are we alive to try new things? Absolutely on that. But let's see how we get through this campaign, learn from that, and then we'll build on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's key to say as well that everything that we do on this side of things is based on an evidence base that we've pulled together. And I find that when I've been involved in several of the marketing activities that have gone on over this last few years, and actually what I think might be a good thing and consumers might buy into, when it actually comes down to it, really doesn't work and doesn't resonate. So there is all this work that Paul's described that goes on behind the scenes to make sure we're hitting the right tone when we're out there. And I think that we also do a huge amount. And there's another question James had asked James Yateman in a similar sort of way about, have we looked at the newly pregnant vegan mums? And so yes, we are looking at all these groups of people all the time, and working with organisations like the British Nutrition Foundation and 1 or 2 others to make sure that we're absolutely solid in what we're saying. Because the one thing that we've got to make sure is that there is clear scientific evidence backing up any of this that we do. Go on, Richard, you wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah, thanks. No, I was just going to back up that point, Will, that at the heart, as you've seen, of us moving forward is what we call evidence-based. And so we need to make sure, both on the health side, that what we're saying is absolutely backed by good evidence. And some of the questions about our advertising, this new Eat Balanced element is really looking at and promoting the health elements. In the past, we've certainly pushed on the emotional side of food, health and nutrition. I'm sure is a big element and a big feature of how we will move forward, working with the right evidence and moving forward, which is a really important element. One of the other questions from that Philip Hallhead put in a good question earlier about how much he enjoyed was positive about the new media campaign, and thanks for that. Was how it's going to be strengthened. And I would say that we do work with a range of professional agencies who evaluate professionally whether these campaigns have been effective or not, in terms of whether we're getting value for money for considerable sums of money on these campaigns. But farmers, levy payers, and I have to say about the dairy group that we're part of, the dairy committee and the dairy board, we do consider how we spend the money and the proportions that Paul mentioned earlier on, and it's really important that we do have value for money, and that's all part of this evidence base, which I think you'll hear more of as we go through and talk about different things that we're doing in HDB. Back to you, Will.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I think that we got I had got another question here. So we'll just try and wrap up the bit around marketing at the moment. So Mike Coffey has just asked, what's the difference between the remit of the Dairy Council and AHDB? Is promoting milk the best use of AHDB funds, and will that lead to increased profits for individual dairy farmers?
I'm not sure that I actually don't know whether the Dairy Council exists anymore. Dairy UK have been focused on nutritional aspects of milk, and I suppose the Dairy Council was focused on that. Our remit for HDB Dairy is to promote a sustainable future for dairy farmers and for the industry. And Mike's question is promoting milk the best use of funds? I think it is, and the dairy board believe it is about protecting and promoting our industry, and that clearly resonates very strongly with levy payers whenever we speak to them. So that's why it's in there.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And I think so that kind of just when we're talking about proportions here, it probably leads on to a question that David Cotton's asked around the proportion of the budget used for R&D. And it may be just worth just spending a few minutes just talking on how that split works between the various areas.
Yeah. So this year in R&D, we will spend 2.2 million. And the major chunks of that spend will be on we have a research partnership we've had with Nottingham University. So this is the last of a 5-year research partnership, and before that there was another 5-year partnership. So that's 10 years of money with Nottingham, and the partnership with Nottingham. And the other big chunks in that is Mike's organisation SRUC, who work with us on the genetic side. So that's the two major chunks of the money. What we see very broadly from a research perspective, and it's helped enormously by having the Strategic Dairy Farm Network there. It's a critical thing for us is not to do research and stick it in our cupboard or have stuff that takes 5 or 7 years to develop. We need to get it on the hands of farmers as quickly as possible. And having a strategic farm network of right now of 22 farms and the aspiration to get to 25 farms will be enormously helpful in doing that. So either through our website or through our strategic dairy farm network, we want to get out there, get it in the hands of farmers ASAP. That's the key thing.
Thanks, Paul. And so there was a question that had come in, and I think it might be Murray had asked the question again about are we planning on continuing with online meetings post-COVID? And I think that and staff working from home, there's a little bit about finding savings there as well. So, and I think Paul's just kind of touched on that a little bit in the fact that I feel that we've made huge progress in this last 12 months. I'm not just talking about HDB. I'm talking about as a world in the way that we interact with digital technology. About the fact that we can run a session like this with a large number of people on, and it's becoming much more normalised. And we've seen some really, really good results across HDB in terms of the number of people we've had coming along to our virtual events, and actually the fact that a lot of people have been coming along, the people who wouldn't necessarily have come along to an on-farm meeting. So I think that when we talk about having online meetings going forward, we've got to do the best of both, because we know that actually person to person is hugely important as well. And it's not just a case of moving everything online, and that you need that right balance of it, but it's about using all the right technology in the right way. I'll come, Paul, I can see you just put your hand up now. I'll come to you in just one second. But in terms of the cost saving and the downsizing in terms of HQ, well, we're constantly looking at where we are, about where our offices are, about what our requirements are. And so as part of this cost-based exercise, we are looking at all those types of things. So we don't want to be carrying any fat around with us at all. So if there are things that we can change going forward, and there is a more prevalence to working from, then that is something that we will certainly look at, but we've not made any decisions on that yet. Sorry, Paul, I'll just throw to you there.
No, listen, that was perfect. Nothing to add on that question for Murray, but just to actually answer his previous question. While Richard was talking, I was just able to check a figure. So out of the just over £10 million we have for the budget for the dairy side, so levy money and the 2.5 million from external, 3.9 million is on salaries, so just less than 40% on that, right across the various teams and departments there.
Super, that's great. And so Stuart's just come in at the end there and said about our online post-COVID, keep it going, and we will do. And as Richard touched on earlier on, having the ability to go back and re-watch these things, re-watch videos like this town hall today or any of the events we do, it's absolutely vital, and it gives people the ability to do it in their own time. So we're going to take the best of that. Go on, Richard, you've just got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. And a couple of questions from Stuart Roberts about underpinning knowledge. I just wanted to say that with the really good work of Tess Howe, a new element called the Institute of Agriculture and Horticulture, working with a range of different other institutions like the NFU, CLA, and the Institute of Agricultural Management, is putting together, and they've been working on this for about 2 years, a professional body for agriculture, which will look at, and not just look at, but actually promote agriculture as a career, and promote progression within the industry. And I think it's a really exciting thing that a number of us have been involved with and trying to push for the last 20 years. But it really is making huge strides, not just HDB, but Tess from within HDB has been really seconded and pushing that. So it won't answer all your questions, but I would encourage you to have a look at the Institute of Agriculture and Horticulture and the work that Tess has been doing to address some of the questions of making agriculture a career to help not just the dairy industry and potentially lack of workforce there, but actually show that there is some progression and a range of things that would build on the good work of things like Dairy Pro and others. So I hope that helps. Thanks, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was just going to point at the end, but I think you've probably covered most off there, Richard. But that is, you know, and I think the other thing about the Institute of Agriculture and Horticulture as well is it's an industry-wide thing, industry-owned. So there's lots of people, there's lots of different organisations, and it's not just an HDB thing. This is an across-industry thing. So what I'm going to do just quickly now is I'm just going to dip back into the pre-submitted questions, because we've still got one or two of these to get through. So Alan Robinson had asked, and I'll put this one to you, Paul, that current and future generations of homeowners and heads of families have increasing awareness around the integrity of their food choices, both on environmental and welfare grounds. How can the dairy market meet these needs?
Yeah, environment clearly is very important, but we know from the research and the work that our market intelligence team do that price and promotion is more important. So people will look at environment and they'll class that in the main on things like, you know, use of plastic, you know, David Attenborough. And interestingly, as we've moved through the COVID situation, those interested in pushing environment, it's probably steadied a little bit from having a, you know, exponential growth over the last number of years. So it's something we need to stay on top of. But probably go back to one of my earlier answers in terms of who we engage of, and that scale of 1 to 10. It's about engaging people in the right way, with the right messages in terms of what we're doing in the environment. So if we went out and did a campaign, for example, on carbon sequestration, we confuse the hell out of people. So we need to have simple messages that resonate with key audiences, but we also need to do the work in the background to show measurable improvement as an industry, that we're engaging with this focus on climate change, and we do that, but engage with people in the right way and show progress and show that we are part of the future, as we're doing, I suppose, with this Eat Balanced campaign, where we're talking about nutritional benefits of dairy, and we're talking about the comparison in terms of the environmental credentials of the industry.
Thanks a lot, Paul. So I'm just going to dip back into the questions that have been submitted as we're going, because we've had a couple here about exports, about imports and exports. So Graham Bradley at the beginning of the session asked about Britain importing a large amount of yogurt and mozzarella and baby milk. Is HDB doing anything which would result in world-class processing needed to displace these imports? And then that's kind of been followed up by a question from Ian Harvey, which is on a similar plane, which is around dairy representing 15% of all food exports to over 135 countries. However, looking at Bradley's questions, what help can HDB provide to encourage investment in UK processing?
You want to pick that one, Richard?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a fact that we need more added value dairy processing here. I'm part of a group, certainly within Scotland, and other conversations are taking place within Wales in terms of how they can attract more added value dairy processing. Earlier this week, I was approached by Kendall Milk, who are the only baby powder producer within the UK, who are really successful internationally. So I think we've got a role there. We have a role in in collaboration with the farming unions and with Dairy UK in terms of what we do, and ultimately with government to define what's the offering. Why should an investor invest in Great Britain or Scotland or Wales or England, or what are the incentives there? Because there are lots of options for those that are investing in dairy. We now have clarity with where we are in terms of leaving the EU. That will have put on hold some decisions from investors. So we need to work out what's our proposition, what can we offer, what do we need, and how can we help. But certainly in Scotland and Wales, I'm involved with the groups who are looking at that inward investment and how we support ourselves and how we develop our perspectives to pull that in. Okay, super. Cheers, Paul. Thank you for that.
So I just want to check. So Yvonne Kershaw's put a hand up. And I don't know if you've done that by mistake or you definitely want to come up and ask a question. So what I'll do is I'll add you on, but if you don't want to, don't feel like you have to, and I'll jump to another question. If you don't want to, just cancel the window that appears. There you go. I think that was an error. I think we're done. So I'm just going to jump onto another question that was asked. So Jeanette Prince in the chat has asked here, are we seeing sufficient engagement with the KPI calculators? Although the strategic farms have been viewed by thousands of people, are they all farmers, or are there many consultants, etc.? Finally, are we seeing improvements in the dairy businesses as a result of the strategic farm program? So it's probably a good one for you to pick up, Paul. That.
Yeah. So Jeanette used to be on the dairy board, so always precise and pointed questions as usual. And good to hear from you, Jeanette. So on the KPI tool, last numbers I had a look at, which was just pre-Christmas, was I think we, having launched it in October, we had about 200 farmers who were using the tool. We're pushing through our discussion groups that we're involved in. We pushed it pretty heavily through British Dairying and through a partnership which we've had as well. And we're now having conversations with government, with DEFRA, with the Welsh government, with the Scottish government in terms of the KPI tool. And they particularly like it because we're developing KPIs for different sectors. So we started off in dairy, as usual, and beef and lamb are following us, and I think cereals will be after that. But I think they like the fact we've got different KPIs there. The second point was just about the people watching the webinars. You're right, Jeanette. It's not 1,000 farmers. I think the proportion of farmers who are watching it is 65 to 70% farmers. The key thing for us is that, and you like this point, given your questions about CRM system within where you're on the board, is that the more people that registered for this enables us to capture their details, and then obviously contact them and do that. And as Richard said earlier, the knowledge exchange team proactively, and again, great credit to them, phoning up 10 farmers they haven't spoken to in a while every single week for each of them, is improving the contact details that we have, and therefore enabling us to go out and do that. So the future, I suppose, as Will said, will probably be a mix of digital and face-to-face meetings. I mean, it's good that people who are not farmers are looking at it, and some people internationally are having a look at it. And just remind me, just the third point of Jeanette's question.
Actually, I was going to that, Paul, if I may.
Yeah.
Jeanette was asking about the benefit, I think, of whether you can measure the financial benefit of people attending the strategic dairy farms. Good question, Jeanette. As Paul said, nice to hear from you. Whilst you can't take these as gospel, certainly the feedback, very positive feedback from farmers who attended the strategic dairy farm, over 90% said they'd made strategic impact on their own businesses, either cost, productivity, or profitability. The exact figure was 92%. Have said that was positive, and we actually then asked whether they could quantify that benefit to their own farms. And for those of who gave an answer, they said between 25 and 36,000 pounds benefit to their business. So it's obviously it's a survey, but I think what it does say in terms of general figures rather than individual financial amounts, it says a wholly positive that Strategic Dairy Farms. I'm just delighted that they're rolling out, and we're rolling out, as you heard from Paul, up to 22 now of 25 that we're aiming for. And then there weren't any, or there was one just 3 years ago. So I take that as being very positive. Thanks, Will.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. So we've got a few to go to, but we've still got a bit of time left. I've got an eagle-eyed one from James Yateman here, who asked me if this is a glass of milk. Unfortunately, it's not. It's a glass of water. I've realised now that I missed a trick there today. But it makes a good point in terms of product placement. I know that our teams are constantly in contact with various. So if you look at the marketing and our marketing teams on the domestic area, they're constantly in contact with various companies and whatever else, to see where there are opportunities to get products in, to be able to also be able to get, so we've had lots of questions about that. We have constant questions about people who produce food boxes, and actually can we get certain products in these food boxes and all those types of things. It's very difficult to do some of that, but we're constantly in conversations about it. So this product placement and getting it in the right areas is something we're very aware of, and it's part of what the marketing team do within where we are. I was just going to, before I go into the next question as well, I see that Murray's commented back on the proportionality of salary versus levy collection. And I just kind of want to just return to my previous point around making sure that we've got the right skills to be able to deliver in the right way. Because although it might seem like a high figure in terms of what you'd expect, we have a huge bank of skills and knowledge in there. So if you look at any of the work that we're talking about now, so we've just talked about the strategic farms and the KE people on the ground who are actually doing the delivery and that dissemination of the work out there. That is a people heavy task that we need people to be able to interact with. But then you look at some of the more fine-tuned skills, and we have absolutely fantastic marketeers within AHDB who've built the campaign that you've just seen now, and I did notice that we got a little bit of credit for halfway down, which is always nice to see the positive messages coming in. But that's been built by a team of experts who we have internally, and that has served us very, very well over this last 12 months. So as we've gone into COVID and we've had to flip very, very quickly, we had to turn on marketing campaigns in very short order. We had to get the evidence. And so I know this was especially true on dairy when we got into the early part of COVID last year. We had the expertise in-house to be able to turn the evidence on, to be able to look at where the gaps are, what do we need to do, and we're able to fill those gaps really quickly. And that's because we had the expertise available to us at our fingertips. If we'd outsourced that and we were using it as and when we needed to, then our ability to be able to be agile and to be able to turn things on and turn things off as we needed to and react quickly to situations would be much reduced. So I think you've got to bear in mind that although you might think that it's a high number, what I would really be wanting us to be judged on is our delivery, and everybody has their own opinion on what that is, and we're laying out our stall very clearly here about what we want to deliver, that we want to make sure that the industry is happy with what we're doing, and that we've been led by industry. So I would say that as we go through, that's what I want us to be judged on. But I would just go back to the previous point I was making about costs, is that it's not just willy-nilly. We are really, really focusing on this cost element of it, and there will be visible reductions in the costs that we have within AHDB. And as part of this transparency, we will be talking much more about where we are, about the structure, about how AHDB is operating, and how it's been taking on board that feedback from levy payers. So I hope that answers that a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip back into the pre-submitted questions. So maybe, Paul, if you just want to tackle this one from Nick Ransom, which is why are you taking money from outside sources, therefore not making it independent? So he's given the example of VOLAC here. And also, what are AHDB planning to do on investigating carbon sequestration? I know you mentioned that slightly, but it's probably worth revisiting.
Yeah, okay. So why do we take money from external sources? Well, probably a couple of reasons. Firstly, we have to recognise that the levy coming into the dairy side has stayed the same for a number of years. I think 10 or 12 years. So every year, as other costs increase, we've got the same budget. So we have to look a bit more broadly in terms of how we pull in money there. And secondly, because collaboration is the name of the game. Whether we talk about environment, in terms of what we do, if we're going to be net zero, we need to work with the farmer unions. We need to work with Dairy UK. We need to work with government. When we've done marketing, it makes absolute sense for us to work with Dairy UK and processes and come up with the common campaign. We define what the plan is for what we're going to do in bull calves. It makes perfect sense that we work with others. We work with the farming unions on that. So I think, and in the back of my head, I think there's maybe a Twitter conversation we maybe had about a month ago, specifically on taking money from the Betty Laws Foundation, which is the charitable foundation of VOLAC. I think that was the number of your point. Just to put everybody's mind at rest, the agreement from the Betty Laws Foundation, where they gave us £1 million over 5 years to support the rollout of additional 8 strategic dairy farms. The Welsh Government fund another 8 farms. So with our 9 farms we fund, Welsh Government farms and the VOLAC farms, we can get out to much broader. We can get out right across the country, across Great Britain, and do that. The involvement in terms of defining the strategy for what we're doing in strategic farms, that's led very much by Nick Parsons, who runs the team. The definition in terms of what each strategic dairy farm does is agreed with the strategic dairy farm host and the knowledge change manager. It's farmer led. So the charitable foundation of VOLAC do not get involved in any of the detail of this. So they give us money, and their view in terms of why they do this is a successful dairy industry is good for VOLAC, and the Welsh Government, I guess, will take that view as well. They want a successful dairy industry, so that's how they work with us. Picking up your second point is on carbon sequestration. Yeah, listen, it's working with the farming unions on that. The dairy processors. I was in at the Dairy UK board in November. They're coming to our Ash Amanamadi, who's the chairman, and Judah Bryans, who's the chief exec, is coming to our dairy board this month. And environment is one of the key things that we have to focus on. You know, we're going to have to COP26 in Glasgow in November. So we recognise that we need to stick a bit of pace behind what we're doing on the environment, and most importantly, all move forward in step. There's no point people moving miles ahead of the industry, because they're always hit as our weakest point. So yeah, we recognise that. That's where the focus will be, and we will inevitably fund research on that, but we'll work with others to make sure we have a consistent programme and a consistent plan.
And I think this kind of there's a question that Peter Rees has submitted, which is more a comment that Peter Rees has submitted as well, and that's about so what Peter says is about making the optimum use of the levy, work effectively with key strategic partners, and the Milk Moments campaign was a great example where HDB was able to multiply up the available funds through government and Dairy UK, and could we apply that across the board to maximise bang for our bucks? I think what I'd say in terms of that, I mean, I agree entirely. We've got to be able to be as strong as we can. Those partnerships are absolutely vital. If you look at the strategy document, there is a section in there about some of the key people we work with already, but it's not just limited to that. We are looking to partner wherever we can to make sure we get that bang for our buck. And, you know, and I think we've got to realise as well is that there are lots of different parts to this that we can add to. So it's not necessarily that we have to drive and deliver everything. If we get lined up with the right people, we can really, really enhance that delivery. So it's not necessarily just about getting more funding in, but I mean, where we can do, and as Paul's just explained through the dairy side of things, we're looking at opportunities to be able to do that, because soon that 10 million can become more and more the more that we put it, the more strategic partnerships that we put in. So looking for additional funding is one way, but another side of things is actually delivering more effectively. So what partners can we find to be able to enhance our message, to be able to add skill sets that we don't necessarily have? I've just talked about keeping some of the key skill sets in-house, but that doesn't mean we're masters of everything. Actually, there are other organisations who can help us build and deliver. And by the same token, especially with the evidence base that we're looking to build and the key focus around that, how can we help other organisations, you know, and plug gaps? What do they need? How can we help build the industry as a whole? So this piece around partnerships and working together is going to be absolutely a key part of what we do. So I agree with pretty much everything that you've said there, Peter. So we've got on, Richard.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Peter's point there, and it's absolutely right in terms of those partnerships moving forward. We know farming is changing, dairy farming is changing, and if we're going to be an evidence-based organisation, which is clearly in our strategy, we have to work with those other people. Environment, we've heard, health, nutrition are all areas that perhaps we're not expert at, but that's where we need to partner with other people to provide a good evidence base moving forward. Murray's point in terms of he uses the term salaries. The point is, in terms of the knowledge exchange, which is a huge area, which levy payers have said they want us to do, that figure could be reduced if we asked agencies to deliver a whole range of knowledge exchange to dairy farms and a whole load of training. It's a debate that we could have. But I wanted to say that it's provocative just using that salaries without us thinking about that. And of course, we could outsource a whole range of different things. But back to Peter's point, working in partnership with people is the way forward. And the Milk Me Moments is a really good example of how we can multiply the money that we have. The money that, as Paul said, has not changed for around 12 years. But what we can do is work with other people and double the money or treble the money that we've got.
Yeah, no, it's right, and just you make a really good point there about the outsourcing piece. And actually, one thing that we've got to make sure that we maintain through this whole thing is our independence, is our independence and ability to be able to be that honest broker in the middle. And that's why you've got to be careful about how much you've got, how much delivery you have control of versus what you don't. And we know we do both. So we deliver ourselves, but also we provide really key information for others to go out and deliver. And whether that's, you know, across all the different sectors, whether it's consultants, whether it's agronomists, whoever it is, there's a wealth that we use it in both ways. So yeah, just to kind of follow up on that a little bit. So what I want to do is now I'm just going to jump in. We've got one last pre-submitted question that I just want to ask, and then we'll mop up any questions and comments that we've got from the chat. And if there's nothing else, then we'll look to wrap up. So Mike Coffey has asked a question, which is given that genetics is the biggest payback in terms of return on investment in dairy, and it has been an extremely good track record of continuous delivery, shouldn't the strategy invest even more in dairy genetics to return even more to dairy farmers? Do you want to have a crack at that one, Paul?
Yeah, I can do. Good to hear from you, Mike. So I guess Mike leads the team at SRUC. So we work heavily with them, and they deliver the service for us on genetics. So, so Mike, you're asking us to give you some more money? No, I'm only teasing. I think in terms of what genetics delivers, the figures are very, very strong in terms of the return on investment on that. the challenge, I suppose, we've had it with genetics, and it's something we have to get through, is while we have got a great team on there, we need to do a bit of a better job about marketing genetics. And I think it's everybody involved in genetics, because there's a bit of a impenetrable subject to a number of farmers, hence the outsourced decisions. So what we're trying to do is to give simple tools out there and run courses to help people understand genetics. And our role specifically in genetics is to play the honest broker role. And clearly the individual seed companies will try to sell their own products. We play the honest broker role. But taking a step back and working out how we spend our money, and Rich has touched on this a little bit. We need to define what's going to be most beneficial for farmers. So some of the activities we do on the strategic farm, which can enable farmers to pick up things which should either save more money or make more money by using some of our tools or services, we need to look at that. And we have to recognize, as has been amplified by this webinar, is that marketing and promotion is strongly supported by our levy payers. So we have a variety of options in terms of how we spend the money, or how the board decide how they're going to spend their money. And consistently, and I know that from the conversations even very recently, there is strong support for genetics in terms of doing that. But as I said, we need to get a little bit better in terms of how we market genetics. And I think if we can do that, I think that's going to be helpful. And just to finish off, and I think the other area which will be critical will be how genetics can help in reducing environmental footprint. And I know we're going to be funding some work with you just over the next few years on that. But that's another area which will be really strong to genetics to focus on, and a good hook for farmers to get into genetics a little bit more.
Super, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. So I think we've got just one or two. So the one or two outstanding things that we've got from the conversation that's had is around going back to the education discussion that we had earlier on. And Stuart made a point about it's long term versus short term, and we need some action now rather than just a long term. I think I would say that there is part of the institute that is looking to deliver as soon as possible, as you said it at the bottom there. But I take that on board entirely. And we've got and James Yateman's sort of made another suggestion there about a briefing paper in terms of dispelling some of the myths. I think that this dispelling the myths type of thing is part of the reputational work that we're looking to do across AHDB, and that is so not necessarily just aimed at schools, but aimed at public in general. And part of the reputation, the advertising that you've seen earlier on, but the things that sit behind that, so the resources that go into it. So there's a lot of work that we do that probably won't be necessarily seen out and about, which is responding to things, which is dispelling this, which is challenging companies like Quorn or others who are coming up with, I never said fake news then, but incorrect advertising or whatever it might be. There's a lot of challenge goes on in the background to try and dispel those myths. And as we move through this reputation, and whether it's looking at it from an animal welfare point of view, a human health point of view, or an environmental point of view, helping people understand actually what the facts are and how we can and how we can help them understand the whole picture rather than just pick out little bits, and whether it be through a Netflix documentary or what it might be is going to be part of what we do on that. And there's already a technology that we've got in play to look at things on Twitter, and whether it's chatbots that are responding automatically to queries. There are a lot of things we're already doing to start dispelling those myths. But when somebody asked a question earlier on about direct return investment at farm gate for marketing, well, it's not. While that is one measure, there are other measures out there as well, which is about changing people's attitudes towards both red meat and dairy, and that is where we can have an impact as AHDB. Not necessarily about peddling products or individual things, there's plenty of that being done by the processors, but it's that attitude and people's understanding of the dairy sector about what the benefits are. And it goes back to the whole conversation we had previously about making sure it's based in evidence, that it's based in factual science as far as human health goes, and trying to leverage those as best as we possibly can do, and trying to spread that message as wide as we can. So that is very much the focus in terms of the reputation and the work that we're going to be doing over the period of the strategy. So that really wraps up pretty much all the questions I think that have been asked. What we will do is there's quite a long list here. I think we've cleared everything out. But what we'll do is we'll revisit this list afterwards, and if there's anything that either needs clarification or follow up on, we will do, and we'll publish that. So if anybody has got any last questions, I'm just going to put up a quick slide now and just talk about how you can feedback on the strategy. Any last questions, let us know, and I'll just try and get to them. Otherwise, I'm just going to pop a slide up that will, if I can do this. There we go. So what I've just put on the screen now is a slide that's basically got the information about how to feedback. So if David or Rachel, you can just put the links in the chat so people can click straight on them. What we have here is the kind of the official feedback for this strategy. So we launched it on the 7th of December, and it's going to run through until the 29th of January. So we've got about another three and a half or 4 weeks left. And there are several ways that people can feedback. You can go online, and the strategy feedback link is in the chat now and on the screen. And if you go there, there's a very, very simple questionnaire that gives you just basically a few questions to feedback on your thoughts overall about the strategy. It doesn't take very long, and it's quite intuitive, and it'll take you straight to answer questions about dairy, so long as you kick on the sector that you're interested in. You can also, if people want to send something either a little bit longer or from a different angle, you can come back in from email. So strategy 2021 at ahdb.org.uk, and that will come through and will be pulled in there. I'm going to stress it again. I know I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but this is a genuine consultation period. We want your feedback, and the feedback that comes in will be taken on board and will be considered. So there is so it's a really, really important point to make, that this is not a final version at the moment. This is why we're out and talking to everybody about it now. So anybody that you come across, please point them in the direction of the website. If anybody on this call or about wants any more information on what we're doing, jump on the website, make contact with Paul, myself, with Richard, and we're more than happy to come and talk to individuals. We'll come and talk to groups. You know, if there are any groups of farms out there in any way, we're more than happy to come and talk to them, because we want to give everybody a chance to be able to ask all the questions. So what I will say is thank you very much indeed to Richard and to Paul for putting the time aside today to come and do this and answer all the questions that we've had put in. But I'd also really like to thank everybody who came on today and gave up an hour and a half of your day to listen to us explain this. So thank you very much indeed, and we'll talk to you again soon. So if you can log out now. Thank you very much. So just for everybody, this will stay on the screen for a minute, and then we'll leave in a minute to time.